Welcome back, Weirdos and Weeboos, to Season 74 this time of Undercards. Yeah, I literally did not play a single game of Undercards between the last mid-season and this new season. Quick bit of context for anyone who didn't see that, last season, of course, has been pretty rough. Thorn ring everywhere. Not just Thorn ring, that's obviously a massive oversimplification of the problem. Thorn ring alone is fine, but just, yeah, generally extremely stally, unfun meta. Now, I must admit that's going to make this video probably a bit shorter, because I can't make as many claims about cards, because a lot of it, the changes are obviously going to be with the previous meta in mind, and I didn't even play in it. Although it does sound like, at least just from what I've heard, that it was not much different than what the meta was like for the first half of the month, which is kind of what I expected. I did mention I thought they didn't go hard enough on the Thorn ring nerf. In fairness, I said that I felt like there's just going to be no tempo deck that exists, aggro or mid-range, in that meta, except for just Arcane Scepter, just because it can high roll stupidly enough that it can win. And I was apparently wrong about that. I heard that there was a kindness spell kind of deck that worked with, what's it called, Memory Keeper, to use its shock ability to destroy a lot of stuff, and obviously kindness had just recently had its spells reworked to be a lot more kind of tempo friendly and relatively cheap, while still being not too cheap to the point where it won't activate shock. So yeah, apparently that existed, but that's the only tempo-oriented deck that I heard of that was doing any kind of decent on ladder. I don't know how well it was doing, but yeah. So yeah, I'm actually kind of glad. I was kind of nervous making that video. I don't really like just being another voice in the crowd, just like, God, I hate this card, God, I hate this card, God, what are the devs doing, God, I hate this card. And I was a little bit nervous making that video if maybe people would just be like, you know, not wanting to hear that kind of complaining, but it does sound like that message did ring true with most people who saw that video, so yeah, I'm glad to see that. Well, I'm obviously not glad that a lot of people felt the same way as me when I was feeling pretty negatively, but at least glad that most people seem to think I hit that one on the mark. Anyway, so, new season. No new stuff though. Well, I mean, reworks, and not insignificant reworks or anything, just, I mean, I wasn't expecting a whole lot, but I thought maybe at least like a new card, like even just one. Okay. First of all, we got a buff to Flower Fingers. It's gone from costing 5 to costing 4. That is interesting, because I already consider Flower Fingers a pretty good card. I did say in fairness that now Plants is getting so good. Not to say Plants is overpowered, of course, but like, you know, it's definitely I would say, yeah, I want to say that Plants is by far the single best tribe in the game. I don't think that'll be too controversial, but there's just one competing for that slot, and that would be Spiders. And in fairness, there's a chance Spiders might be better, but not as a tempo deck, as a control deck, and they're kind of made better not by Spiders being good, but the control being good, so... Yeah, well anyway, yeah, can we, just for the sake of this, we'll say Plants is the best archetype. So yeah, to be fair, we did get to the point where we had so many good plant cards that I struggled to fit 3 copies of Flower Fingers in my plant decks anymore, even though usually, as I say, I think it's one of the better cards in Plants. I was still running it though, so I'm kind of surprised it got this buff, but I guess I won't complain. This is, well, it's good. I mean, it's not 100% comparable, of course, but you know how good Ice Cap is. Ice Cap's one of the best cards in the game, despite literally just being a 3-cost 3-1 with charge. You're basically paying 3 to deal 3 damage to face most of the time, and sometimes you're doing it to pay 3 damage to deal to kill a monster, or sometimes if you're lucky you'll get an instant attack with it and it also won't die next turn. But usually it is really just pay 3 gold to deal 3 damage to face, and yet it's still one of the best cards in the game. And then you have Flower Fingers, which before was pay 5 to deal 4 damage to face, and it's got much better stats, and it's got plant synergy. And now it's 4 to deal 4 damage, so yeah. Now, of course, you don't have to target face, but I'm just saying, like, in these kind of decks, that kind of reach is really useful. You are using it to go for face quite a decent amount. So yeah, I like this change. Okay, I say that. I like this change, but not necessarily... I'm not sure if I like it from a design perspective, but I just like it from a I like plants perspective. I probably would need a bit more context on the current meta. Okay, I'm just getting a little bit worried here, because the same kind of thing I said in the other video. I feel like if they don't deal enough with... Like, if we stay in a state at which tempo decks have to be like Froggets, and hitting those stupidly insane high rolls on turn 2 or 3 to have a chance, then like things are never going to get better. You can keep trying to power creep tempo cards to the point where they can keep up, but the problem is I think you're going to be in a situation there where tempo decks are always either literally non-existent, or the second that one does exist, it's going to be crazy OP, because the high roll that you would need for a tempo deck to be good is going to be something disgusting that lets you get way too much of a lead on people super early on and ends games kind of too quickly. So all I'm worried about is the potential that Flower Fingers goes a little bit, like, too strong, and it only doesn't seem too strong right now because tempo isn't that great. But yeah, I don't think that's the case, but I'm just wary that could be the case. I'm gonna be clicking that a lot. Anyway, Spincake has now been given Thorn. Now I believe Spincake's uncollectible, isn't it? It's summoned by... wait, actually, no... Yeah, just meant there it is. Yeah, it is a token. I thought so. Yeah, I just wanted to double check. I thought the one that you could collect is Smolder Cake, and this one, Spincake, is uncollectible. This is a token. So yeah, Spincake, the only way you get this card is you, under normal circumstances, will never have it in your hand. There are cards that summon a Spincake with a certain amount of stats. It's usually not 1/1, and that's what it's about. And yeah, now instead of having no abilities, now it has Thorn. So yeah, this is going to affect, let's see, I do not remember if, is it Top Chef is the name of the card? I mean, I know what the card is, but I don't know what its name is. Yeah, Top Chef. Is this a Smolder Cake or a Spincake? Ah, this is a Smolder Cake. Okay, so Spincake would only be, they rework Cauldron. We'll get to it in a moment. Is it only these two? I thought there was one more. Oh, I think I was just thinking of the pie that Killer Cook summons, but no, yeah, these are the only things in the game that summon Spincakes. So yeah, if you summon them from Grilling King, they give you 3/3s, and this will do it through a shock that will summon one with stats equal to the cost of the spell. So yeah, let's get back to the patch notes. That's the one thing I kind of don't like about Underscript. I kind of wish you still could get to the patch notes from the homepage instead of having to press escape and click on game patch notes from there. But anyway, I don't think this changes much, but cool. Yeah, that's all I gotta say. The only thing that might be important, this is really a stretch, but I just want to bring it up because if it does become important, then it will lead to some cool new stuff. Spincake is a 0-cost card, which means that Sad Bun Bun can bring it back from the dead. And yes, it is literally just a 1/1 with Taunt, which is not very impressive, but you've always got to remember that Sad Bun Bun only can resurrect 0 drops, and on top of that can't trigger their magics, so, or delays or anything like that. So it's not like they have a great selection anyways. I mean, they make up for that by the fact they're used to 4-cost 4/5, which is really good. But yeah, your choices right now, I mean, there's definitely more than these that I'm forgetting right now, but for the most part, your choice... Well, actually, I can just check them up. I was going to say Tiny Frogget and Star summoned from Lauren, but just a moment. So, oh yes, Bun, of course. How could I forget Bun? That's like one of the main ones people do. Yeah, you can resurrect Bun, which is definitely one of the best ones, but you've got to run a lot of Bun Buns for that to work. I didn't think about Dynamite Stick. You could do that, but again, not that crazy. But definitely one of the better ones. Clean Rabbit, nothing to say about it. Gift, I mean, it has Taunt, but it doesn't have Attack. I should have put it on Monsters Only. I forgot about that. Yeah, Spincake. Oh yeah, you could resurrect Miss Peepus. I'm sure you want to do that. Yeah, so Spincake's just like another 0-cost option in the pool now. I think that Star will still usually be better, but it's nice that we now have a 0-cost Taunt that does have Attack. So maybe that's good with Sad Bun Bun. Bit of a stretch, but it'd be cool if it happens. yeah. Honestly, kind of surprised this card hasn't been repurposed in some way. Quick reminder, if you're like, whoa, what is this card? I've never seen it. This Queen, when she was first added, used to have a completely different effect, where you would catch an enemy in a cyber cage, and the cyber cage, obviously once they changed it to the wear-wire effect, the cyber cage is now unused as far as I'm aware. But yeah, it's kind of weird. I kind of thought they might repurpose this for something. They probably will in future. I thought they would have done it by now. Anyway, getting a bit off topic there. So yeah, Spincake, slightly better, but doesn't change that much. Christmas Tree has been changed. Its effect is the same except for a new synergy. So Christmas Tree is a 7 cost? 3/9 if I remember right? Disarmed Taunt. Oh wait, it doesn't have Disarmed anymore as well. I didn't even realise that when I first looked at it. Just let's get it up again. Christmas Tree. Yeah, Taunt. It can attack now. It's not Disarmed anymore. It summons 2 gifts, costs 0 attack taunts with 2 health. But with synergy, because it's a plant, it will summon 2 3/3 gifts instead. Yeah, I like this change. I feel like old Christmas Tree was just a bad card to have in the game. Not because it actually was annoying to, well, kind of annoying, but not because it was a significant threat to deal with that threw off the balance of the game or anything. No, if anything, it was usually quite weak. It was just kind of annoying to deal with and not very helpful to put in your deck most of the time. It just was a taunt you couldn't do anything with that put 2 more taunts on the board. And yeah, I wasn't a fan of that. Now, it actually makes use of its plant tag. It's another option for plant synergy, although I'm not sure if plant synergy will use this. I don't know, it's hard to say. It is a 7 cost 9/15 taunt. Oh, actually, I've got to reconsider that. I was going to say this doesn't seem like the kind of thing you'd run in plants, because I feel like it's a bit too slow. But it is a 7/9/15. And the only condition is playing a plant beforehand. But because of that condition, it's not really like a 7 cost, it's more like a 10 cost or 11 cost. I mean, best case scenario, it's a 9 cost. Well, oh wait, hang on a minute. Oh, actually, okay, I'm getting kind of out of my area of expertise now. I was going to say that the best case scenario is you play this with a Ficus liquor, which would still cost 9 in total, which means that you'd obviously have to come down a bit later and it's a bit inconvenient to do. But then I forgot, of course, about Green Flower, which of course has existed for a while, but the cards that gave Green Flower used to be bad, but now we've got Flower Can after the rework is actually a decent plant card. Flower Can with Christmas Tree with Regal. Maybe. Definitely you're getting more towards mid-range over aggro. I mean, to be fair, Plant leans that way anyway, but yeah, if you're doing that, you're going kind of more towards mid-range. It's a bit slow, but damn, it is a lot of stats. Maybe your deck won't even be that slow. Like, maybe it won't even be slow because even though it is a quote-unquote slow card, like, you try to high roll with it, as I say. You try to just set it up so that, like, you basically turn 3-4, have, like, already this 9/15 worth of taunt on the board. Well, anyway, I can't really say for that yet. Okay, for everything I'm saying, I am saying this has got potential. I definitely underrated it at first look, but I don't know. I feel like it's going to be it's going to be another direction you can take plants that will probably work, but I don't think it will be the best way to play plants. Probably the best way to place plants stays the same as it's always been. Anyway, Desk Lamp has received a buff of all things. Now in fairness, Desk Lamp is one of those cards that I know it's good, but I just don't like to use it, so I don't run it a lot. But I've seen it's a pretty popular card, and it's quite annoying to deal with. Even though it's just a 4-cost 2/4 taunt, that one dodge it's got gets put in a lot of work. You'd be surprised. Or maybe you wouldn't, because you've also been a victim of Death Slam. When it comes down at the wrong time, it's devastating. And they buffed it, although in fairness, only minorly. But now, when it dies, if you've got a free slot in your hand, it will put a Dream in your hand. And of course, being a completely free card to play, that's pretty good, even if its effect is minor. So yeah, now I'm not gonna lie, the reason why I'm not complaining about this change, even though I think this is a card that was already strong enough, and now it's getting buffed, is because, as I said, I don't think the buff is that significant. I don't think this... I mean, probably Death Lamp sees a bit more play, but I don't think it will, like, throw it out of control. I think that it is kind of good design, because I think that one of the reasons why I didn't use Death Lamp, even though I knew it was a decent card, is because I kind of don't like putting something in my decks that doesn't do something. Okay, no, it does something, because obviously if it didn't, it'd be awful, but like, what it does is very boring. It just kind of annoys and slows down your opponent for a turn, and to be fair, it's worth it for only 4 gold, and it's very good at doing that, and sometimes it lets you get away with some stupid stuff, but even if it's just a small thing like this, I like that now it both stalls and also helps you search for stuff. Those two things synergize really nicely, and I think it will add a bit more interest to this card. Big Mouth has received a rework, but a rework that's so clearly a buff, they've even labelled it as a buff, even though technically something bad happened to them as well as good. They lost 1 health, but in return, their effect really got improved. So Big Mouth used to be a 5-cost 3/7, and when you played it, it would eat an enemy monster costing 2 or less. Actually, I don't think it had to be... Did it have to be an enemy? I'm not sure. I think it didn't have... It had to be an enemy. But either way, you would want to use it on an enemy. It would instantly kill that monster and it would heal 2 health to you. And to be honest, I like the idea of the card. I like the idea that we have this tech card to deal with the situation in which, like, a deck comes around that runs loads of cheap stuff and, like, closes out games super quickly. And now you have this reasonably priced card with good stats that trades well into smaller stuff and also insta-kills one of them to give you health. But in practice, it was never useful, even whenever we did come across a time where super cheap stuff was really good and was becoming a problem. For example, I tried to use Big Mouth against gemstones back when it was the scourge of the earth, and it did not help at all. It was 2 health healed, okay, nice, but it doesn't really matter when they have basically an infinite source of burn as long as they can keep board control, and of course being gemstones, being stupidly overpowered at the time, it could always keep board control. And killing one thing that cost 2 or less was not that effective, especially because Pickaxe had transparency, so by the time you were killing it, it had already managed to generate at least 1 gemstone and get at least 1 attack in. Maybe even 2 before it even comes out of transparency, which is, yeah, that's not okay. Anyway, but yeah, we just saw time and time again that this card was not doing the job it was made for. It was made to counter cards, like decks that run loads of cheap cards to be aggressive and kill you early, and it never really helped against them. It was like an above average card to run in those decks, but it didn't really make the difference. It didn't really serve its purpose as a tech card. Now, it's going to be much rougher against kind of much harder on those kind of decks that run a lot of 2-drops or 2 or less cost monsters, because as you can see, it's not only going to happen when you play it, but at the end of every turn, which means, by the way, that the first turn you play it, it's going to kill 2 of them, and every single time you're healing 2 health. So yeah, I have a lot more confidence that this will make it actually do its job. Now, in fairness, now it's not targeted, it's random, which is, yes, a downside, but I don't think it's as significant as it might seem. There are a lot of situations in which that can be a very significant downside for other abilities if they go from being targeted to random. But remember, this can only hit enemy monsters, and they can only hit enemy monsters costing 2 or less, and you're going to hit 2 of them the second that you play this. How often is your opponent going to have more than 2 cost or less monsters on the board? I don't think it's going to be something that never happens or anything, but I don't think it's going to be that common. Most of the time, the outcome is guaranteed that both of them will die. And if there's one, well, also the outcome's guaranteed. Even if there are 3 targets, you still got a 2 in 3 of hitting the one you want to hit. It's going to be a rare circumstance that Big Mouth doesn't actually hit the target you want to hit. So yeah, nothing but positive stuff to say about this change, and considering how intense this change is, I think the health reduction is also fully warranted. So yeah, that's a good change. Punk Hamster has received a very small buff. All it is that, and I'm surprised it took them this long to decide to do this, the way it used to work is that it was a 3-cost 4/3, which when you drew it would deal 4 damage to you, which is obviously a bad thing. But then when it died, it shuffled itself into the opponent's deck, which meant that, of course, then they would draw it and they would take 4 damage, but then they would play it and then it would die and it would go into your deck and then you would take 4 damage, and you know, it keeps going on forever. Now all they've done is they've made it so it only deals 4 damage when you draw it if it was been generated. So of course, if you originally had this in your deck, if you're playing it for the first time, it won't hurt you when you draw it. But it will hurt when the copy that is generated, that you shuffled into your opponent's deck, gets drawn by them. And of course it will still hurt you when they go back from your opponent's deck back to you. So don't get me wrong, I don't think this changes all that much about Punk Hamster. I don't think it becomes too much more or less playable because of this change. But yeah, I do think this is a change. I actually, like, this is exactly what I thought they were going to do with it. But then of course months went by without them ever changing it. And I was like, aha, I guess they're not going to change it. And now they did. Don't know what changed, but sure. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if the self-damage was ever very relevant, though, because the kind of deck that's running Punk Hamster, obviously, since it's going to burn both of you down, the kind of deck that does that is very much a deck that benefits from both people taking damage. Even if, like, you both take an equal amount, even if you both take 20 damage, the kind of deck that runs Punk Hamster is the kind of deck that doesn't care. Like, you know, they'd probably rather deal 20 damage to the opponent and take 20 damage for doing it than deal 10 damage to them without taking any damage. Even though in that situation, that scenario, they get more of a upside. They just get so much benefit from having their opponent in low health in a deck that wants to run Punk Hamster that, yeah, that I don't know how relevant that is. But, I mean, yeah, it makes sense. I like it. Fair enough. Mace got completely reworked. Thank you. Was not a fan of Mace. Used to be a 3-cost 1/4 that couldn't attack. I can't remember if they made it able to attack at some point, but most of its life it couldn't attack. I'm pretty sure it had disarmed. I'm pretty sure it couldn't attack last time I remember. And when it died, it would deal 4 damage to whoever killed it. And it was one of those cards that's just, again, kind of similar to Deathslank, but even worse. It's just annoying to deal with. And I don't think it was even good. So, like, you know, it's one of those cards that's just, it makes you frustrated because you're not having fun because you have to deal with Mace. But, like, you can't even feel like you've been outplayed because you know your opponent. You're thinking, why is my opponent running Mace? And then you win, but you don't feel good about it because the half the game you just spend trying to get around their Mace. Anyway, so yeah, now Mace is a 4-cost 4/5. With a very different effect. Well, oh, hang on. Is this right? Okay, it says here, deal 3 damage to an ally monster and the opponent. I took a quick look at it earlier, and I think it said 4. No, it did say 3. I guess I missed... Yeah, never mind. That is correct. So, 3 damage to an ally monster and 3 to... Wait, was it the opponent? The opponent. So it cannot hit... Right, it has to hit face. That's a weird one. Definitely sees play somewhere. Don't know how strong it is. Because, okay, hear me out. It is 3 damage to face on a really good stat line for 4 instant. It's even better, in some ways it's better than Ice Cap, obviously, besides having better stats. But it does also have the thingy, the fact that it's not affected by taunt, since it's damage, not charge. Now, in fairness, that's not me saying that Mace is better than Ice Cap, because at the end of the day, Ice Cap costs 3 gold, and even though it's only 1 less more, gold cost, especially when you have multiple of these things, really adds up quickly when it comes to instant damage to face, burn effects like that. So, the 1 extra gold is going to matter. And as well as that, the tempo, while definitely still valuable, is less relevant in a burn deck, so yeah. The main thing that's, like, nagging me here is just... Okay, I'm thinking this might be decent, because self-sacrifice decks, although they obviously still can exist, are kind of lacking in tools. There isn't... I swear there used to be more, but to be fair, I can't think of any examples. But I feel like Shambling Mass, off the top of my head, is the only self-sacrifice card in the game, really. unless you count the cards that deal 1 damage to your own monsters, but I don't think those are really made for self-sacrifice. I think those are more made for cards like Receptionist. Whereas this could actually be used in a self-sacrifice deck alongside Shambling Mass, and given cards that give you enough benefit from self-sacrifice, maybe that's good. I mean, in fairness, Shambling Mass plus Mace on some really powerful dust effects could be kind of a scary opener. Either way, I like this rework. This is so hard to judge because I feel like there are 3 outcomes, and obviously, when I explain it like this, it makes it sound like I'm not really saying anything at all. But like, I feel like there are only 3 outcomes here. 1, it turns out that Mace is actually really good. People use it either in self-sacrifice decks, the way I explained, as like a way to get a quick board presence going, and maybe you sacrifice, I don't know, monster kids for board buffs, or I don't know, snail buckets for just stuff on the board. I think the second option is it's really good in some niche deck that's competitively playable, but it's only really good in that one deck. And I think the third option is it's just useless, and I'm overrating it. Actually, no, I don't think this card will be useless. I think there will always be a place for it. It's just going to vary wildly, like how good it is, like whether it's really super competitively relevant or it's just a card you can run and it can work. Yeah, I think I'd stick with that. Anyway, Revoltplug has gone from a 1/5 to a 2/4, and its effect has slightly changed. Instead of choosing one target with its ability, which is to deal its attacker's damage to an enemy monster, now it doesn't target anyone, but it's able to hit multiple targets as a result. It deals its attacker's damage randomly split across all enemy monsters, which is a bit of a weird change at first glance, but it makes a lot of sense because obviously Revoltplug's supposed to reward you for doing a whole bunch of hand buffing, but if you do get an enormous Revoltplug with like 20 attack or whatever, what's the point? You're not going to run into a monster with 20 health. Most monsters don't get much higher than 8 health, so once you get to 8 attack, any more you put on a Revoltplug was usually being wasted because, well, you won't need that much damage to kill one monster, and even if there are other monsters around that you could split that damage across, you can only pick one target. So obviously in that situation this becomes better. This becomes worse in other situations where it doesn't have as many buffs on it, but I think obviously the Revoltplug, they're really trying to push this, you only want to run it with like full-on hand buff, so it makes sense they'd make it this way. Also, making it a 2/4 instead of a 1/5 is obviously an improvement as well, since its ability works off its attack, and it's a haste monster, and yeah. Royal Loox got reworked. Oh yeah, I didn't read what this one was. I saw the name of Royal Loox, but I didn't actually read what it was. Okay, so it went from a 3-drop to a 6-drop, and it's now a 4/4 instead of a 2/3. Effect update. Magic deal 1 damage to all enemies whenever you summon a monster calling 6 of them. Figure the magic. Oh, okay, I think it's a different cost with the same effect. Wait, no. Okay. Dealing 1 damage to all enemies was always its effect. I don't think it did it when you played... No, it did not do it when you played it before, I'm 90% certain. And whenever you summon a monster costing 6 or more, trigger the magic, so I think it used to be 9 or more? Yeah, no, it definitely used to be 9 or more. Makes more sense being 6 or more, though, because that fits with Totem synergy. Don't know if that's really relevant anymore. I haven't seen Totem in a while. I don't know if that's because it's actually bad now or what, because I used to see it a lot. I suppose there's better stuff now. I haven't played it, so I don't know. Ah, that would make sense. Something didn't feel quite right, because I was thinking, doesn't this do something when you play it instantly? Right, that was it. It deals 1 damage when you play it, but it doesn't deal 1 damage to all enemies, it's just 1 damage to one target. And yes, it was 9 cost, not 6 cost. So yeah, that's the original version. Alright, so, how do I feel about that change? I think I like it. 6 is a lot. 5 might have been nice. 6. Ugh. Okay, I'm mixed on this change just because, like, of course, the fact that this is a card that requires you to combo it with other cards makes it kind of spooky that they are, you know, making it cost double. Even if they made the threshold for playing a card with it lower, that's a lot more. Well, no, actually, now I think about it, 9 or 3 plus 9, 6 plus 6. It's the same stuff. And if anything, that makes it scale better, because it's the repeating one that's 6 or... No, as for whether this makes the card stronger, I think it's probably about the same, maybe a little bit stronger. But now I think about it, I definitely think this change makes it better designed. Because what I was about to say was, I don't know, it might be better as a 3-drop, because you could get it on the board early, and sometimes it wouldn't be contested, and that meant that even though you're still paying 12 for the combo in total, sometimes you would get away with more with the 3-cost version, even though the total adds up to more. The upfront cost being 3 to start meant that you could get away with more. But now I think about it, that's not really... It's better designed for that not to be a thing, because you're kind of relying on luck a lot there. Because, like, obviously, assuming your opponent has the proper tools in hand, they should always be able to kill a 3-cost 2/3 before you give them a whole turn to, you know, trigger the effect. But of course that's not always the case, and a lot of the time when it's not the case, it comes down to pure luck. So yeah, it's probably better they have it this way. And of course, making the effect threshold lower means that it encourages you to trigger it multiple times more. Well, anyway, time to get to the change which, at least out of the ones that I took a good look at, seemed the most scary. Task Manager. Oh boy, the second I saw that, I was like, well, here we go. So, Task Manager was, to be fair, it's never been broken. It's never been good. So I'm not going to, you know, get too mad about the fact it's gotten this change. Task Manager, since it's been added, it's always had the same general idea for an effect, that being for every card you played last turn, deal 1 damage. And there's been different variations. It can only damage monsters, but the excess damage goes to face. And then, it can't even deal damage to face, it can only deal damage to monsters. And now they've got this version, which isn't 1 damage per card played, but still encourages you to play a lot of cards. You need to play 8 other, so not counting Task Manager, non-token cards in 1 turn. And then you will deal 9 damage to a monster and the opponent. So, I think this is probably fair, but it's spooky still. Okay, so my first reaction to this is, oh my god, no. That was like my first reaction, is like, they've done it, like we're dead. Because I thought, okay, they probably thought this was fine because it's 9 damage and it can't go higher than 9, and like 9 plus 9 for 2 Task Managers in your deck is only 18. And even if you've got like a third one that's 27, like, you know, without poke, that's not enough, and with vitality in the game and blah blah blah. But then there's Purple Mascot, which just lets you generate more copies of Task Manager. A lot more, actually. So I was getting worried. But actually, I have to admit, I didn't really think about how awkward this condition is. 8 whole other non-token cards this turn. Now, I was thinking, but yeah, I am 100% certain you could, even though that sounds like a lot, I am 100% certain you could set up a combo. You could set up this scenario where you've got all these cards that cost so little and you're just generating more cards for more cards for more cards, and every card you generate costs like 1 to 0 gold. And then you could easily do this effect. Then I realised why it says non-token. I'm kind of just used to seeing that in a lot of places, but I was realising, wait, why does it say no non-token? I think that's the specific reason, is they want to prevent you from being able to, on purpose generate cheap cards to use for later to make this easier. Because obviously most tokens in the game don't cost very much. I mean, try and find a token that costs 3 or more. There aren't that many of them, as you'll know if you try to use Birdly Plush. Not to say it's bad, obviously it's got a strong effect, but like, it's a lot harder than it sounds to find tokens with a base cost of 3 or more in the game. The vast majority of them cost between 0 and 2. So yeah, I think it's very sensible that they don't count token cards. It means that you can't just use cracked table and stuff like that, or oh come on, gemstone. Oh yeah, gemstones. That's the obvious one. Yeah, gemstone. Imagine if they allowed gemstones. God, that'd be terrifying. Yeah, that kind of stuff. If you use those kind of cards, this would be broken. So I'm glad they had the foresight to add that little caveat. So the only thing I'm thinking here is, honestly, the only reason I'm still scared about this is because, as far as I can tell, you don't have to satisfy this condition multiple times. That might sound like a weird thing to be worried about, but here's the thing. I think it's really, really difficult for you to play 9 including Task Manager, non-token cards in 1 turn and then Task Manager without running out of gold. I think on its own, that is something you can do in a deck that's built to do it, not to and it shouldn't be too hard. But doing it twice sounds very hard, and doing it 3 times sounds borderline impossible. So that was why for a while I was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be so worried. But then I am a little bit jumpy just about the thought that you could just do this all in one turn, you know. And I know that's a lot of gold to spend, but you know, Burger Pants, probably use that. Burger Pants itself only costs 3 and of course generates you a lot of gold, and I know that it has a big downside on it, but like still, I think just now, let me double check. Task Manager does cost 6, doesn't it? I don't want to get this wrong. 5. Oh, it costs 5. Oh boy. Oh, I'm starting to change my mind now. I'm starting to get more scared again. Because I feel like people... Again, I feel like this card is fine if it's like you have to have 3 separate turns where you do this, or whatever, to kill most people you run into, or 2 separate turns where you have to do this. But the fact that you could just do this all in one turn and then just play more than one Task Manager without having to fulfill the need condition more than once is what scares me. I suppose you can only have 2 in your deck, and you can't invest too much into deck searching tools because you've got to keep your deck super cheap to... But then I think just Snails on its own is a good enough deck searching tool. Because okay, this is what I'm picturing. In fact, yeah, let's go to the deck builder. It's a bit more visually interesting. So Snail, triple business snail, obviously. Gotta be shiny. Do we run Snail Mobile? Probably. I don't know if we run 3 because that might be actually too much card draw. And then, yeah, 3 of these, 3 of these, 3 of these, 3 of these, 3 of these. Just a whole bunch of that. I suppose you may as well... Well, no, actually, no, you may don't may as well run Snail Trainer, you know what I'm saying. Because you want this to be the only epic in the deck, because I think you want purple mascot, so that this way, getting Task Manager is going to be crazy consistent. You've got 5 Task Managers in your deck, essentially. And these are good for tempo as well, these cards. They're 4 cost 4 5s. So yeah, And then, I don't know, self-sacrifice? Or maybe, is there any bravery spells you want to run here? Or maybe you just run ice caps for the final slots in the deck, just because you need more burst damage. Maybe this is too many snails, but you get the idea. Like, literally just this. Like, what if this is just good enough? Like, I'm not joking. Like, that's 18 damage there straight away. Oh wait, no, you need Burger Pants. What am I saying? I should have remembered that. But Burger. I'm doing this one-handed because I'm holding my mic with the other hand. That's why I can't type. Well, I don't really want the yellow snail as much, and I guess the other one I don't want as much is probably the red snail, because the blue snail helps keep things cheap. I'm really surprised this doesn't this doesn't exclude 0-cost cards. You could even put in Tiny Froggets potentially, but I think that's going too all in with it. Yeah. I don't know if you need 3 Burger Pants. Maybe not, but... Yeah, but okay, that's just a rough draft. Of course, I'm not going to... Because I'd need to play test it and all that. I'm not going to put out the full deck idea. But then, as for your artifacts, you've actually got a few options. Like, you could try and make this, because it will burn your deck fast, actually into a Shorm Shop deck if you wanted to, with the Ice Caps as the finishes, if you don't want to have to use multiple Task Managers. But I think it's better to just use multiple Task Managers, go with Poke, and go with, well, there's a few you could go for. Glamburger will... Well, no, you don't really need Glamburger. I'm like, it'll get you there faster, but it's just 1 gold. So unless you're using it early on, I suppose it's not that effective. But then you might just win off a Snail Tender with it. But probably not. Draw, Ambition... Yeah, you got a few options. Either way, you probably want to use one that either gives you more gold or gives you more... Wait, do we run enough generated stuff to use Hourglass? Wait, just a minute, I've forgotten. Does Time Warp only affect generated cards, though? Yeah, generated only. I thought so. I don't think Time Warp's useful then. No. I mean, it could make the Task Managers generated from Purple Mascot better, but of course, yeah, we don't have generated cards. Yep, either way, you get the idea. You can see how this deck would come together. Which seems a little scary. I suppose we'll see how that does. I am realising this final choice for artifact is actually a little bit difficult. It might just be draw. Draw just might be the best one. Because of course you're going to need a very full hand. I mean, that's why we got snailmobiles. But we could maybe find business snails. Oh yeah, does this deck actually want so much draw that we want 3 snailmobiles and 3 business snails? Maybe. I don't know, I like this for now. I'm not going to go further with this, just because... Well, I say that. I kind of want to make this last artifact selection just so the deck isn't unfinished. Yeah, there. So, okay, that'd be my first draft of a deck of this type. I don't know, I feel like I need more... I really want to put the reflection in, but of course it's been changed, so it's not happening. Yeah. Well, anyway, I should probably get off of that. Alright, so yeah, Task Manager looks a little spooky. At the end of the day, my actual prediction, in fairness, I feel like this isn't going to be the deck. Like, even though I am scared of this card, and maybe, you know, a couple months' time it becomes OP or whatever, right now I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, it seems like a viable OTK option. I don't think it's going to be, you know, particularly spooky yet. The only thing is, of course... Well, okay, I'm kind of spoiling it. No vitality change. Boo. And again, to be completely 100% transparent, because I know I've spoken positively about vitality in the past. Again, my position on vitality is that vitality is fine enough to exist in the game if the reflection exists, but then they rework the reflection. I don't think you can have vitality in the game while not having an effect like the reflections and still have a healthy game. Because as I said, that makes just picking vitality an insta-win against any kind of OTK that doesn't generate such an absurd amount of damage that they can deal with the opponent having 20 to 30 health more than they would otherwise. I mean, yes, they could do it faster and then maybe it's just 10 extra health, but you know what I mean. Anyway, that's a long one. Whenever I feel like not much has happened in the past month, I'm always like, I don't know if I'll be able to say as much for this video, and then I end up finding way more to say. And every single time I think to myself before I say I won't have much to say this time, I'm like, you probably will when you get into it. And I'm like, I don't know, what would I say though? And then this happens. Uh-oh, there's a sudden cut. Did I do something wrong? Well, okay, I didn't really get any technical details wrong, at least as far as I'm aware, but the reason why there's a cut here is, okay, you might have noticed that the audio isn't that great so far. I mentioned that last time, that's because my mic stand is broken and I have to hold my mic. Now this has had varying results. For my, like, post-commentary videos where I record the audio into FL Studio and put, like, compression and stuff like that on it, this is unbearable, because it just picks up all the little movements of my, like, hand or whatever, even when I'm trying to keep it as still as possible while I'm holding the mic. So I was kind of recording this expecting that to be the problem, and I also did it with the last video as well. But actually, it looks like it might be something to do with the way I decided to compress things, because when I am live talking to you and not doing the recording as like a commentary in post that I put into FL Studio, it's actually not too much of an issue, the moving around. The larger issue was how distorted my voice was, and that was because, of course, I was putting my mouth very close to the mic. And the reason I was doing that is because otherwise it was really, really quiet. The thing is, I have basically always had my mic on maximum gain at all times, because I've just found that my mic struggles to pick up my voice without picking up noise unless I do that. But of course, now that I was actually putting it close to my mouth, like really close, of course having it on maximum gain just blew my ears out. So I've tried to fix it up a little bit. I have been editing in volume automation throughout the video to try and make the volume changes a little bit less smooth, but some things just can't be fixed, just need to be re-recorded. To be honest, I probably should have re-recorded the whole thing, but I am also kind of conscious of the fact that I've got to get these out as soon as possible, otherwise, you know, it becomes less relevant. Yeah, I didn't have the time to re-record everything, but From this point onwards was where it got really bad, so this is where I'm like, yeah, I should re-record from here on out. As well as that, I'd honestly like to restate the kind of things I said about the rest of these in a shorter terms, so I may as well do a redo of this. Conveniently enough, the very next change is Cauldron, which is the only card that, as far as I'm aware, I got wrong when I did my initial recording. Because quite literally, quite simply, I mean, what it says here is a lie. Well, it's mostly true, but it's a bit of a lie. It says here that Cauldron has been reworked into a 4-cost 3/3 from a 7-cost 8/6. However, it is not a 4-cost 3/3. It is in fact a 5-cost 4/3, as you can see. So yeah, it lied. So anyway, it's a 5-cost 4/3 now, and it's now got Shock, Summon a Spincake, which again is the token from earlier, it's just got Taunt, with attack and health equal to the spell's cost. This is one of those things that, like, I'm kind of surprised this already wasn't a thing in Undercards, but yeah, it wasn't a thing. And now it is a thing. That's pretty cool. So yeah, I like that they added this. I just feel a little bit mixed about it, because, I don't know, maybe I was alone on this, but I really liked the old Cauldron. When it was first added, I was a little bit wary it'd be not too good, just because, like, I thought maybe it's going to be too easily dealt with. But the fact that as long as you had one unit left over on the board to trigger its support, essentially it was a 10-cost deal 8 damage with an 8/6, which was, you know, usually pretty good. Yeah, because, okay, yeah, I should mention what its old effect was for anyone who didn't know. As I say, it used to be a 7-cost 8/6, and it used to be that it had support, so that's whenever anything that's except itself attacks, give you a pie, which was a 3-cost kindness spell, which would give one of your monsters +1 dodge and haste. So obviously you could, as long as you could attack with something that turn, you could get a pie, and you would usually use the pie on your own Cauldron, because you've just played it most likely, so it can't attack unless you give it haste, and it has 8 attack, which is a lot of attack. Not many things have much more than 8 attack by default, and, you know, you're giving it dodge, so the small health it has isn't affected. So yeah, I really like Cauldron as a combat mechanic, so I'm kind of sad the old version's gone, but that's not to say the new version is bad. This new version sounds like it's going to be a cool effect. In fact, it might actually be pushing it in strength. I didn't think that at first. I thought it just looked good, but not really pushing it in strength. But then I realised I'm too used to the old Cauldron used to be, that its effect could only trigger once per turn. And for some reason I thought the same thing here, that like this could only trigger once per turn. But no, shock effects don't have to be once per turn. If you had more than one spell you could afford to cast in that turn, then they will both trigger the shock. Which does mean you can get a lot more value out of this. You're not just limited to, oh, I play this card, and then I play this spell, and then I get the stats, and then it's done. Unless it survives a whole other turn, which it never will. You know, if you have enough gold hoarded, you can get an enormous amount of value off of this. I don't know if this is the real strategy that you want to do with it, but I don't think it's impossible that a deck could work where you get Cauldron, and you just hoard gold, and then just one turn you just like Cauldron, like, I don't know, Silly Strings is a spell that obviously comes to mind for me. Yeah, I don't know, Cauldron, Silly Strings, Wereform, I don't know. And you got like an enormous board there. And you'd have to do Wereform first, otherwise your board would get full. But still, yeah, you get the idea. That would be a really big play. Like, yeah, that's very expensive, but you are basically filling your entire board with that play. While also, yeah, that would be killing 2 of your opponent's monsters, putting 2 1-cost copies of both the things you killed on the top of your deck, summoning 2 10/10s, and also summoning a 6-drop, and also dealing 4 damage. That's quite a lot. There's quite a lot you can do. I mean, as well as that, one thing that people pointed out is you can pull it out with mercenary hire, which is a nice meme. But more importantly, cloning. Apparently, cloning on Cauldron is, what, 7/6 plus 2 3/3s. Sorry, no, 2 4/4s. So it'd be 7/6, 4, 8, 15. Yeah, that would be 15, 14 worth of stats for a total of 9 gold. Some of that is haste, of course, because you would have the original Cauldron, you'd have the 3/3 copy with haste, and both the original and the 3/3 copy would both summon a 4/4. So yeah, that is just an instant board fill for 9, which is, yeah, that's pretty spooky. So yeah, Cauldron's looking pretty good. I'm excited for these changes. Might see some nerfs in future maybe, but for now this looks like a cool effect. Let's get back to the changes. So after Cauldron is Bench. Bench has been changed from a, well, it used to be a 5-cost 0/5 with Taunt, and when you played it, it would gain +1 attack for each card in your hand. Now, I've mentioned quite a few times before that card draw in this game is super efficient and, if anything, too plentiful, to the point where it's nowhere near as valuable as it would be in most other card games, and as well as that, there are even situations in which things that take away cards in your hand can sort of be useful depending on the context to help you not burn your own deck, especially if you've got a more expensive deck. So you might think that Bench seems like the old version already seems like a great card. If it's a card that gets better for each card in your hand and you spend a lot of turns with a full hand, surely that's going to be great. Well, in practice, not so much. That's just because even if you high roll with Bench, it's really not impressive. I mean, okay, there is already a 5-cost 6/5 in the game with no ability, Aaron, and don't get me wrong, considering it is a card with literally no ability and just stats, it's actually pretty decent. But that's certainly not to say it's great, even though it is a 5-cost 6/5. Bench is essentially just a 5-cost 7/5, but conditional. Now, in fairness, it also has Thorn, which can be an upside, but if we're talking about a high attack, high tempo play, if anything, no, that sounds more like a downside than an upside that you have Taunt. It means you can't protect it with Taunts, and it is quite a threat, so you probably would want to protect it. So, yeah, definitely it wasn't literally useless, but not one of the better cards in the game. So, yeah, it definitely warrants a change, and now it's a 5/5 instead of a 0/5. It does not gain attack when you play it, instead it draws you a card. So, how do I feel about this? So I was kind of mixed about it, and I had to have a bit of a reaction where I had to think about it for a bit when I originally recorded this, but obviously that recording, we're cutting it off now. So to shorten out what my thought process went through, my original thinking was, well, maybe some control decks still use it just because it's a Taunt, it helps you stay alive, it helps you search through your deck because it's drawing a card, even though you probably don't want the card advantage so much. And then I remembered that, you know, Death Slant just got buffed, and it kind of does everything that Bench wants to do, but better. So, you know, I don't think control decks are going to use Bench. I think that Bench only has one position in which they really have any chance of being useful, and that would be going into mid-range decks that both need taunts and draw. And even then, like, that is a niche, like, thing. Okay, I know this is being really harsh. I do think this change is an improvement. I do think that. I think this is less useless than the old Bench. However, this is still a pretty useless card. Again, I can only see it existing in a pretty standard mid-range, just pure stats deck that's not really got much going on in terms of synergy or anything, that just wants to have simultaneously have Taunt and also have some more card draw. And even then, I'm just questioning, would it just be better to run a better Taunt and a better card draw as two separate cards rather than run Bench? You know? Because you can definitely find better card draw than this. So yeah. Spaghetti has also received a change. And it's another one of those ones where I'm like, okay, this is like a improvement, but I still don't really know where you use this. So Spaghetti, I think it's a 5-cost 4/5? I've never used it. Was it a 4-cost or a 5-cost? Oh no, it's a 4-cost. Still, yeah. It's a 4-cost 4/5, and its ability used to be Shock, heal health to you equal to the cost of the spell you cast. Which might honestly sound better, but it also removed the shock, so you couldn't trigger it multiple times. You would only get one trigger. As well as that, when you actually look at the more expensive cards in the game, a lot of them don't really work all that well with Spaghetti. A lot of them are board clears, which would affect the Spaghetti itself, like Test of Will or Hypergoner. Worm Infusion, obviously, you're taking up a slot. Silly Strings is obviously the best target, or Petrification, but you would have a lot of not-so-good targets here, and by the time you're getting down to the lower amounts of healing, it's kind of not so impressive a card, especially because at 4, you might prefer to simply just run a Taunt to keep yourself alive, rather than something that heals you but doesn't have Taunt. So, yeah. Spaghetti is a card that generally I thought was pretty bad. Now, though, we kind of got to ask, okay, so the old version is bad. Is it better now that it doesn't care what the cost of the spell is, but it can trigger multiple times? And I think the answer is probably yes. I think it's a lot easier to run a deck which spams lots of 2-cost/3-cost spells and get a bunch of healing off of that than it is to get a deck that wants big spells in combination with Spaghetti, and you can play Spaghetti at the same time as the big spells, and it's worth it, and the lack of taunt doesn't get you killed, and the big spell you're playing doesn't have anti-synergy with Spaghetti. I feel like there's a lot more caveats there that you could get caught on. I do like this newer version. I do prefer it. I gotta say though, I don't know where this sees use. Well, I say that I do know, but like I feel like it's a narrow selection. So obviously, there's no reason aggro would want healing, and as well as that, I don't think control wants this, because I don't think control really wants to trigger shock over and over. I don't know. Maybe in future. To be fair, we did just get Cauldron, but Cauldron, I think you don't. Again, because it goes off a spell cost, I think that Cauldron, you don't want that so much. Like, you don't want to cast loads of spells so much. You want to get big value off the spells you cast. I don't know, a lot of shock effects feel like they're more oriented towards aggro or mid-range, you know, tempo-based decks, and not control. So I feel like control's not going to use this card, aggro's not going to use this card, and that leaves mid-range and combo. Now, what mid-range deck do I think runs Spaghetti? And honestly, I don't think there's really many answers to that, because, yes, it's 4-cost 4/5, but honestly, I feel like Spaghetti's kind of outclassed if you want good stats and healing by long sync. Not that I think it's impossible for you to find a deck where Spaghetti does a job better than long sync, but, well... yeah, I think long sync is usually going to be better. It's just a bit more generally applicable. It requires a little bit less work to make work. And, I don't know, I think as a mid-range deck, you don't need that much healing. Because, like, the reason why mid-range sometimes likes healing is, well, to be aggro. Because it's going to have more stuff on board, and the only way that an aggro deck can really beat a mid-range deck once the mid-range deck gets established on board, since the mid-range deck stuff is just simply bigger, the only way that aggro can really win from there is if they have enough instant damage to kill mid-range without them getting into the kind of mid to late game, at which point they'll be overwhelmed. You don't need that much healing a lot of the time. A lot of the time you only need a small amount to hit a critical breakpoint and survive what would have otherwise killed you. So I don't think you really want this continuous spam healing from Spaghetti. Which means there's only one place where I really think Spaghetti could be useful, but it's very specific, and that would be a combo deck that wants the healing to have a longer clock against aggro and other tempo-based decks, so it's got a better shot. That combo deck also is able to spam lots of low-cost spells, and also... like, I'm thinking Mines, I guess, is probably what I'm thinking of, the kind of deck, because, you know, Mines is going to spam a lot of low-cost spells. Yeah, I basically see it used maybe in a Mines deck if Mines becomes good again. I don't see really anywhere else. Anyway. That's Spaghetti. Oni. Oni's a bit of an interesting one. Actually, I say that. It's a very interesting one. Just a second. So, spell... from... well, yeah, that'll do. So, thingy. It's got a new effect. It used to be a 7-cost 2/9, which at the end of every turn would gain +2 attack. And it was useless. As I mentioned a while ago, when I was playing Undercards but not really playing proper ranked, you know, just like messing around in like Sapphire or whatever, at that point, I remember running into Oni a lot and it kind of being a monster a while ago, because it used to be a 7-cost 3/9 that would get +3 attack, and I remember that being a lot more intimidating. I don't know if it was actually OP at high ranks or whatever, but it did end up getting nerfed more than once, so I obviously that kind of indicates it probably was pretty good. But yeah, as far as I could tell, it was like the Bloody Tree before Bloody Tree was a thing. So yeah, now it's got a completely new effect. It's a 4-cost 4/4, massive price decrease, and at the end of every turn, if you have a spell from another soul in your hand, don't even have to cast it, just have it in your hand, summon a Charles. And again, Charles is of course a 2-cost 3/1 with armor, so he takes 1 less damage from everything. This card is very fascinating. this card is essentially an extremely potentially game-breaking powerhouse of a card, but one that fits into a sort of archetype which is currently very underdeveloped and very unimpressive. So it's really hard to call how good Oni's going to be, because I think if this synergy was based off of something that was an already existing and already effective strategy, then this card would be broken, no question. But the fact that it's specifically in spells from other souls, which is a very weird synergy right now. Yeah. Now you're probably thinking, is this it? Is it just Book Register and Oni? There is a third one. There is the manual. The reason why it's not coming up is because they annoyingly kind of word it in a different way, but it's the same spell from other soul thing. So as a reminder, Book Register, 3 cost 3/3. If you have a spell from a different soul in your hand, deal 3 damage to a monster. The manual, 5 cost 5/5. Look at 3 random spells that you cast this game from other souls and add 1 to your hand with -2 cost. And of course, well, we already talked about what Oni just does. Chill Drake is not it's not in this thing. And also another clarifying thing, I asked this in previous videos and I know now from playing with these cards. Other soul, unfortunately they were choosing those words on purpose. The reason why it says another soul instead of not from your soul is because it does not count token spells. You cannot activate these with token spells, which is actually really frustrating because it'd be so much easier to activate these if you could. But yeah. Book Register is generally kind of unimpressive. I don't know, a 3 cost 3/3 looked a lot more promising to me, especially when you just need it in your hand. A 3 cost 3/3 that deals 3 damage, sorry, I mean. But when I actually used it, I found that a 3 cost 3/3 deal 3 damage was often alright. You know, don't get me wrong, it's above curve. But, like, I don't think it's far above curve. I thought it would be, but after playing with it, I feel like, no, it's not very far above curve. Even though it is, again, above curve. And that kind of doesn't matter too much if the condition is super easy. But the thing is, this condition isn't super easy, technically. I don't know, it's easy in the long term, but in the short term, early on, it's hard. And the later you leave it to activate Book Register, the less valuable it becomes. So, yeah, it's really hard to actually get this down at a critical time, where the tempo it provides is actually going to be very significant, while fulfilling its condition. The manual definitely seemed a lot stronger, but that kind of seemed to go in a different direction, where it was more for long game viability, and a lot of these kind of decks that would get spells from other souls often, you know, they were kind of just made to be mid-range decks that just get tools and then figure out what to do with them. You know, random stuff that's not from their deck, because I mean they have to do that to get spells from another soul. So they weren't usually control focused, so you know, the manual either ended up being a bit slow a lot of the time, or ended up, yeah, providing value, but not enough to beat out another value deck. So yeah, but Oni here could be the thing that glues it all together, just because this is insanely strong. Like, okay, if you have a spell from another soul in your hand, again, you do not have to play it, you just have to have it in your hand. Then, this is literally a 4 costs 7/6 that gets worse the longer you let it live. Obviously, Charles has 2 health technically, because 1, but take -1 damage from everything. Yeah, and it's even better than that, because it's a 7/6 split across 2 bodies, and as well as that, one of those 2 bodies has armor, which means that if it gets buffed, it can snowball and be much worse than just a 3/2. So yeah, I mean, anyone who watched my 3-to-play series knows how insane Charles is with buffs. Back when Noodles used to give you a spell that would give a monster +2/+2 and draw you a card for only 2 gold, back when that was the case, running decks that just ran 3 Charles and Noodles as one of their artifacts was like an instant take any like aggro/mid-range deck and instantly make it like something you could get to Legend with. It didn't matter like how much of a mess the rest of your deck was. If you had Charles Noodles, you could get there. So yeah, as you can imagine, not quite the same now because you can't get easy access to buffs like you could then. But if you do have any kind of decent buffs, then yeah, Charles is absolutely still very intimidating, still a monster. Probably, actually now I think about it, with the new Force of Nature, that could be kind of spooky. Oh yeah, I would not like to be the guy who goes up against an Oni that summons two Charles, and then by the time you're finally able to kill those Charles, you think, suddenly they use Force of Nature, which was the spell from another soul in their hand the whole time, and then not only get their Oni up to 6 health, but then also get both the Charles up to 3, so now they're 3/4s, or maybe even 3/5s if you can't kill them in one hit. Yeah, that sounds rough. So yeah, this card is terrifying in potential, but it's really tied to a very unstable archetype. I'll say this, it might not be the time for this card yet, but I think there is no way this card doesn't eventually receive some kind of rework or nerf to tone it down a bit. I'm not sure if that means it's going to happen literally right away. Like, again, we don't have enough from another soul stuff in your hand in the game for this to be an easy slam dunk yet. But yeah, definitely in future when more from another soul stuff gets added, Oni might need to be toned down a bit, because this looks like a terrifying engine right here. So yeah, that's Oni. They weren't kidding with that one. I guess they are listening, you know, with the whole tempo issue. Anyway, Bomb, in a similar vein to what we were just talking about, Bomb has kind of become like Book Register. Bomb used to be a 3-cost 1/5, which had delay, deal 2 damage to the opponent, and turn start, if it hadn't been killed, it would sacrifice itself to deal 2 damage to all enemies on the board, and 2 damage, no, I think it was just 2 damage to all enemies on the board, and sacrifice itself, I think, because it already dealt the 2 damage with its delay, so yeah, I'm pretty sure it was like that. So yeah, it was a tech card, again, for kind of swarms of, like, small things kind of decks, but it wasn't very popular, which makes sense. I only briefly tried running it in Gemstones, specifically because I felt like when Gemstones... So this is old Gemstones, by the way. When Gemstones was stupid overpowered, I felt like one of the only decks that could ever potentially beat it is a deck that was so greedy that it would just spam like 0 drops and 1 drops on the first couple turns and just go for an enormous tempo swing right from the first or second turn. I think that was literally the only way you could beat Gemstones. So for a while I was running Bomb in my Gemstones list, just because I thought, well, if I ever run into one of those decks, I'm just going to play Bomb and they're going to cry. But then I never really ran into decks like that. I ran into one like once, and other than that, I never really ran into those very hyper aggro decks. So I kind of cut it, because I'm just like, well, I mean, it counters it, but I don't know if I really need to counter it if no one's playing it. Anyway, that a bit of a sidetrack. It's a 3-cost 3/3, and it burns the lowest cost non-generated card in your hand to deal 3 damage. So still a 3-cost 3/3, deal 3 damage. And I did mention that I was underwhelmed by that. It is again above curve, but it wasn't as good as I thought. So does that mean that Bomb is bad? Hard to say. I think it could actually be decent. The main reason I'm saying that when Book Register disappointed me is because this one doesn't have the same issue of not being able to play it early on. And I think being able to play it early on means you could potentially get a lot more value out of it. Potentially a lot more. The thing is, this downside is practically non-existent. You know, burning the lowest cost card in your hand, oh boo-hoo. Because, you know, when it comes to burning the lowest cost card in your hand, burning cards in your hand does not hurt in undercards, again, because of the efficiency of card draw. So, like, yeah, you're not really too bothered that this works like this. Yeah, I just don't see any deck that's, like, really going to cry about losing a card in their hand. I think it's going to be fully worth it to keep up that early game tempo. So yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say, really. I feel like this just goes in a wide range, like as a generic filler card of like tempo-based decks. Obviously Combo probably wouldn't use it. I guess it can go face. I don't know, maybe Combo could use it because it goes face, but then, you know. Actually, wait. I was going to say Ice Cap's just better, but this gets through Thorn and Ice Cap doesn't. So it might have a niche. Yeah, I think Bomb's got a shot of being a decent card. I don't think it's going to blow us away, but I definitely think it's good. It's not bad. It's going to see play. I don't know where. I feel like there's just too many decks that could run it, but no decks that couldn't function without Bomb. So, you know, it's kind of hard to say. But yeah, On a side note, just while I'm talking about burn, I don't remember if I've done a tangent about this before. Hopefully I haven't, but I probably have. Microwave. Just want to bring this up. This card hasn't changed, but I just want to bring it up. It seems like a lot of people think this is the worst card in the game. Don't get me wrong, I'm not about to say it's a great card. But I do think that since burning a card in your hand is such an extremely minor downside, I think that really this card is a little bit overlooked. A little bit. I do think its use cases are very niche. The main problem is that a 1 cost 2/2 Thorn, in my opinion, just isn't even really that impressive. So even though the downside is almost irrelevant, the upside is also almost irrelevant. But still, it's a 1 cost Thorn. That's a good thing. Especially if you've got, like, you know, some kind of scary engine that you want to keep alive. Well, if you've got a 1 cost Thorn, it's going to be a lot easier to keep that thing alive. But yeah, anyway, I just wanted to bring that up as like an example of I think that burning cards in your hand is really not much of a downside in undercards. So yeah, I think that was nearly it for the Reworks. I think there was like one more. Ficus Liquor. Oh yes, of course. Ficus Liquor has received a very small but very fair change to make it so that it cannot draw itself, because it draws a plant from your deck, and Ficus Liquor itself is considered a plant. Now I'm trying to remember, it's nagging me. I swear I remember making a plant deck, well not a plant deck, but a deck that ran Ficus Liquor, 3 copies of it, as well as a couple copies of some other plant. So I literally was only running 2 plants, Ficus Liquor and this other plant. But it still worked because my Ficus Liquors wouldn't be bricked, because even though there's literally 1 plant in the deck for them to draw, the Ficus Liquor would draw the Ficus Liquor, would draw the Ficus Liquor, would draw the plant. And as I mentioned, even though it was only 1 kind of plant I think I had 2 copies of it. So I actually very rarely break my Ficus Liquors, even though I was running a deck with almost no plants, and I was running 3 Ficus Liquors. So yeah, I'm really trying to remember what I was even trying to draw, though. It's nagging me. I think I was trying to activate the synergy of some plant, but I don't remember why I was so desperate to. It's nagging me. I don't even remember what that deck was. But I remember doing that, and obviously thinking, it's kind of stupid that, like, you can have a 2 cost, like, sorry. But I remember doing that, and I remember thinking, it's kind of stupid that here we have this, like, 2-drop that can draw itself, and you don't really have to run that many plants with it to actually have it do its job, even though usually you would. So, yeah, I like this change, even though it's not going to change much. And then lastly, there is Vase or Vase. Now, there are very few times which I will actually side with the American pronunciation, but I think I prefer Vase to Vase, although, to me, Vase is one of those words where it doesn't matter what I say it sounds wrong. Anyway, it has been changed from a 3/3 to a 2/2, which is kind of shocking to me, but I guess I'm not going to complain. This is because Vase is summoned for Vase Breaker, and Vase Breaker I didn't think was a particularly strong card, but apparently I guess it was, and I guess I could believe it. I think generally it's not a particularly strong card, but I do think that the one place it would excel is in a Stally meta, and what have we been in recently? Because of course, not only is it a card that just is proactive when most of Justice's spells are reactive, while still being defensive, but of course it like really rewards you for being patient and stalling out the opponent, because of course it gets better if the opponent has more monsters than you, which is if you've been stalling things out and not playing anything. So yeah, I do think now it's been nerfed this much that Vase seems like a dead card. Vase Breaker seems like a dead card. Like, why would you run it? Because best case scenario, this is a 4-cost 4/4 Thorn. Yeah, split across 2 bodies. Yeah, both those bodies have the -1/-1 if you kill them this turn effect, like it's on your turn. But I don't think that effect really is that significant. So, yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I think that this card kind of sucks now. But I'm not gonna complain, because it's also not a very fun card to deal with. So they might be kind of killing it on purpose. Well, anyway, getting around to the spells, Pezza Time has got completely reworked. It now deals 4 damage to a non-determination monster, and it has a delay ability that if it is damaged but still alive, summon a copy of it with its current HP. This scared me at first. The reason why is we have a 4-cost spell that is able to copy any monster of any cost while also dealing damage. Yes, it is like an enemy monster, not an ally. Wait, just a minute. Oh, wait, it can be an ally monster. Oh, boy. Well, yeah, anyway, you get my point. Yeah. Okay, I am now kind of re-freaked out because I didn't notice last time that it can target any monster. It's not enemy monsters. Oh boy. So yeah, 4 costs to get a copy of a 10 drop sounds kind of scary. I mean, picture this. How expensive is this combo? Ficus, Pezza time on your own Ficus. Thingy. I don't know. Would it just be double ice cap from there? And that would be 14 instant damage. And that would also put 2 7/5s on the board. Maybe that's not so scary, but yeah, definitely. If you've got any already existing board, and then you drop Ficus, and then you also have enough gold left over to also Pezza time, that's terrifying, because that's adding another 4 instant damage to your opponent and another 4/4 stats onto the board for every single unit you have ready to attack, which is kind of scary. And of course, it doesn't have to be placeholder Chris, that's just the kind of obvious go-to answer. It could be a haste monster, which allows you to clear boards in situations where you otherwise wouldn't be able to. It could be, I don't know, just something with a really powerful dust effect. Although I'm not sure if there are monsters with dust attack effects that have high enough HPs for this to be particularly useful. And of course, it could be something that is a self-damage synergy card. And of course, because you're kindness, you also have self-heal. So yeah. But wait, maybe this with Puppet Scarf as well. Ooh, yeesh. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely seems like a staple of kindness from here on out. It looks like a fun card. As much as I'm kind of doom-saying about it, it looks like a fun card. I do think it's going to be cool for the game, but yeah. I'm surprised they didn't make it cost 5. Even at 5, I feel like it'd be like a little bit scary and potential. Not sure if it would actually be overpowered or anything, but like, I'm surprised they went 4. But I'll take it, I guess. It seems like it's going to be fun. But yeah, I am predicting this gets nerfed at some point relatively soon, because it just seems like this has got to give way too much value. Pi has been changed, so that it gives, essentially it's now got Pezza times old effect. And Pi's old effect is 100% gone, which, didn't expect that one. This is interesting, because one of my first concerns when I saw Pezza time is, oh, you just hit an enormous enemy with this, and then give the copy that you summon haste using Pi, and then trade it into the original, and essentially for 7 gold in total, you are killing an enormous monster while getting a copy of the enormous monster, for only, what, 7 gold, 4 for Pezza time, 3 for Pi, which, you know, does sound a little too strong. But then I realised that Pi got reworked, so it's like, wait, is there any way to give things haste? And the only way would have been Date Alphys. So at that point it gets a little bit, is that really as strong as I think? Especially because, of course, Date Alphys doesn't give dodge like Pi did. So yeah. So the real implication here is just the thought that there are very few ways to give any monsters haste now. Like, there really is not many ways in the entire game left to give any monster you want haste. There is Assault and Bravery, and there is Date Alphys. That is it. In the entire game, there is no other way to give your monsters haste as far as I'm aware. At least any monster you want. Obviously, you can give a monster haste, like, by summoning a copy with haste, with, like, cloning, you know, weird stuff like that. But you know what I mean? Like a generic give any monster I want haste. There is literally just Assault and Date Alphys, and those are your options. So yeah. Another Chance has been completely reworked, and the rework is weird. I'm not sure if I like it. It feels a bit out of flavour for Determination. It's a 3 cost now, and instead of being a self-sacrifice spell you use to kill one of your own units to summon a 3/3 Lost Soul and heal 2 health to you, it's now a 3 cost spell which deals 1 damage to all monsters, and for every monster it kills, you summon the next soul with its stats set to 2/2. Okay, the main reason I'm not so sure about this card is, like, I feel like the intended use of this is as a cool board clear. Like, you intentionally kill your own monsters because they've got good dust effects and they have 1 health left to get 2/2 souls and get their dust effects, while also killing enemy monsters to get even more lost souls, and that sounds like a cool, skillful, tempo-based thing. But then, I feel like in practice, that's not going to be what it's used for. That's going to be too hard to set up consistently, and I feel like when you don't get that set up, it's going to be very underwhelming for 3, so it's not going to make the cut in a lot of decks. What I see it being used for is literally just a 3 cost deal 1 damage to all enemies. Like, that's it. And then you might be like, wait, doesn't that suck? I mean, you have Strafe for 4. But you gotta remember that Strafe is, of course, Injustice, which has basically nothing but amazing spells. And you gotta remember that Asgore exists. And I mean, if Washua Asgore could be a thing, when Washua costed 6 and dealt 1 damage to all enemies, I think that paying 3 to deal 1 damage to all enemies and then 12 to play Asgore and kill an entire board regardless of its previous state, while also putting a 7/8 on the board, yeah, especially if you got even just 1 Lost Soul alongside the Asgore, could be pretty big. I know that sounds like not that big a deal because the Lost Souls are just 2/2s, but like, a lot of the time it's only realistic that after that happens to them, the only thing the opponent could do to come back is kill your Asgore and reset the board back to a neutral state. But it's not so likely they're going to be able to kill your Asgore and then also kill whatever small extra thing you have alongside it. Which means they can't really get the board back to a neutral state very easily most of the time. So you're going to be, like, no matter what, even worst case scenario, they have the best response possible, you're probably still going to have something left on the board while your opponent has nothing. So, yeah. Anyway, so I'm not going to lie, I really feel like Another Chance is only used to combo with Asgore or other stuff like Bacon Queen. I kind of don't really see it being used as an actual board clear for normal purposes. Not gonna lie. Again, unless a self-sacrifice deck comes along with enough 1 health monsters that want to be killed, that it's genuinely not a bad idea. But I don't think that's gonna exist. So yeah. Fortune got reworked, and it's spicy. It's basically just a buff. It's gone from a 4 cost to a 2 cost, and its effect now gives you 3 gold instead of 5. So you still profit 1 gold, but now you only have to pay 2 up front instead of paying 4 up front. So you might be thinking, why the hell is this not just literally labelled as a buff? 2 reasons, but it is basically a buff. 1, you could discount Fortune, and then you would be getting a profit of more than 1 gold. So obviously, you know, you can't discount it as much if it costs less, which means your maximum potential profit is lower. But more importantly, Fortune was kind of annoying when your opponent got it off of Arcane Scepter randomly. So I think that's part of the reason why they made it cost a lot less. I'm guessing they didn't want Fortune off of Arcane Scepter to go as hard as it did. I mean, essentially, by getting 5 gold out of nowhere for free, you were essentially getting to take an extra half a turn almost. So yeah, that kind of puts in perspective just how too good that is. So yeah, this 2 cost version should be less crazy when you get it off Arcane Scepter, while still being a pretty big benefit. But the only thing that people are worried about is if you are going... I forgot... okay, you know what, it's too late for me to do, like, memorizing, like, gold amounts on which turn, depending on if you're going first or second in this goddamn game. So, I've forgotten exactly what it was, but, like, there's some way you could get, like, 8 gold on turn 2, or, like, you know, basically you could obviously get extremely high amounts of gold extremely early with Fortune, especially in combination with Integrity passive. And that means you can get some really disgusting openers now, but that is something that requires a lot of luck and requires you to spend a lot of the cards in your hand, which, again, I'm not necessarily complaining about from a you won't have enough card draw perspective, and more from a because you have less cards in your hand, the chances that you have plays you actually really want to make at this moment in time are reduced. So, yeah. Undying Spears got nerfed. I'm just going to take a guess and say that I was 100% right. No, but seriously, I did say that even though I haven't played with this card since it was changed, and obviously that means I haven't played it, I did call that this seems crazy OP. I mean, you're paying 13 for 16 worth of stats put across 2 bodies that attack instantly, and they also have Taunt, don't they? I think they have Taunt. Oh, no, they don't have Taunt. Never mind. But still, yeah. 16 with the stats that attacks instantly. They used to have Taunt. They don't anymore. Yeah, I don't think that's much of a shock. No-brainer, that's good. Especially in a Storly meta. So now it's been nerfed. And honestly, even still the nerf version, even though this is a harsh nerf, this still looks decent to me. Not, like, broken or anything, of course. But they had to not only... They didn't just make it so that you can't get 16 worth of stats anymore. Now, you only get 12 worth of stats. Which might sound like, oh, yeah, boo-hoo. But still, seriously, like, that's a whole -2 attack, -4 health. Like, imagine if any other card, even something like an 8-drop, got like -2 attack, -4 health. I don't know, what's a really good example? Sad Dummy. Imagine if Sad Dummy, you just came in one day and it's like, oh, Sad Dummy's now a 3/5 for 7. Now, of course, it doesn't quite apply like that, because the bigger stats get, you kind of get diminishing returns, but still, it's a significant loss of stats. So, yeah. Anyway, that just leaves 2 more. Hail has been reworked, and I must admit, I did have to read this over 4 or 5 times before I figured out what was different, because for some reason, I was thinking it might be some strange technicality with the wording of this. But no, this is the same. What's different is not the turn end effect, but the fact that it is a turn end. I completely forgot it's usually a turn start. I much prefer the fact that they made it a turn end now, because it feels more like you're directly affecting, and you're like, I feel like with the turn start thing, because you had to obviously give the turn over to your opponent and all that, I felt like a lot of the time I wasn't able to make plans based off of when Hail triggered, because it would always happen at the, you know, I would never be able to set it up to be line up as I wanted it. I'd always have to give my opponent a chance to fuck up whatever I was trying to line up. So I kind of didn't like that. It felt like when I dropped Hail, like I wasn't planning ahead. I was just like, I want to stall, throw it out, you know. It didn't feel like I was like, yeah, I think that now is a good time to deal 1 damage to all monsters. I can line this up like this so that it all like lines up. Yeah, it feels like you're more directly affecting the game, so I like this. Small buff to it, honestly. I know that I see why they label it as a rework. Technically, there could be some really neat situations where that doesn't help the fact that it's on turn end instead of turn start, but that's basically a buff. And Thorn Ring, finally. Hey, it finally got a proper nerf. Well, it's labeled as a rework, but nerf. Interesting. Whenever you cast a spell, gain counters equals to its cost. Turn end, spend all counters. If you spend 11 or more, add an ice crystal to your deck. Now, at a very quick glance, you might be like, oh, so they just made it 11 instead of 10. But no, there's a much more significant thing here. The ice crystals aren't going to your hand anymore, and they're not going straight to the board. They're going to your deck. So this is an interesting one. The problem here, well, I say the problem here, the good thing, the problem that makes Thorn Ring less OP is that it takes time to get it out your deck. And you might be thinking, time, what does that matter to you? You're stalling for forever to get to the end of the game, and you're going to outvalue them. If anything, isn't this a buff? It's anti-fatigue, you know, isn't that busted? But no, the reason why Thorn Ring could stall that long is because it could never die in the early game, because its ice crystals would always come down way too early, and they would not only prevent an attack instantly by paralyzing someone, they would not only protect for you by having Taunt, but then they would also trigger a one-sided board clear that would wipe anything their opponent had ready, while dealing burn damage to the opponent. It's kind of like, you know. For 4, way too much sustain, way too much dealing with the board control, staying alive, like stalling, whatever. So, you know, before, both iterations of Thorn Ring have either put it directly onto the board or put it directly into your hand for you to put directly on the board. So, it was giving you the benefit way too soon. I've mentioned before, one of the reasons why I think tempo decks just couldn't exist properly without having to rely on Arcane Scepter for random bullshit go moments before was because of the fact that you really had to kill Thorn Ring before it even got its first Ice Crystal most of the time. Or if you did let it get its first Ice Crystal, you had to have enough over-the-top damage to kill them right then and there, or have a silence ready to silence the Ice Crystal. Those were basically your options. So yeah, very rough. And you're kind of on that race to get there before the first Ice Crystal. Now the first Ice Crystal comes down so much later. So you're given much more of an opportunity to actually like steamroll these Thorn Ring decks before they can get to the late game, where they will be, they will still be unstoppable monsters in the late game. It'll just now be that in the late game, it's not like a guaranteed that it's going to go late game. They can't force you into it super easily now. Now they've really got to fight to take you there instead of being able to get there for free because Thorn Ring. So yeah. Also, a quick correction. Someone pointed out in the comments. I can't believe I did this. I misread the last version of Thorn Ring a decent amount. I caught some of the mistake, but there was another mistake I kind of glossed over, which is that I didn't pay attention to the fact that with the new wording, if you have more than the amount of counters needed, you lose the excess amount. So if you have 12 counters, but you only need 11, you still lose all 12 and only get 1 ice crystal. So, yeah. Anyway, that's all the changes, isn't it? Yeah. I was about to do the kind of one extra thing, like that I usually do at the end of opening all my packs, but then I remembered I already did that in the old recording. Whoops, well, I literally got nothing. No joke, I opened 42 packs and got no epics, and no legendaries and no DTs. And also, of course, I didn't get enough shards to get a DT this season anyway, so, yeah. I guess that's it. One final message I want to leave you with now is that I'd like to just let you know, I know this is not the first time I said something like this, that I might be leaving Undercards content relatively soon, maybe in a month's time or something. We'll see. I suppose what happened before when I kind of left for a month and then came back was I was thinking I'm just having a bad spot, and when I come back, I'll probably enjoy it again. And I have to be honest, I feel like with Undercards, I'm constantly finding the enjoyment very volatile. I'll really enjoy it for a short period of time, but then I've just realized more recently that even though I do have brief periods of genuinely enjoying it, a lot of the time I am playing it, I am just kind of playing it for the sake of playing it, just so I can say in the next video, oh yeah, I did play this season, so, you know, I got some idea what's going on, I got to legend, blah blah blah. You know, at that point, I kind of, you know, it's not becoming as enjoyable. So, I'm not going to instantly just drop the Undercards content out of nowhere. I'm going to ease into it. Because I know that a lot of you here came for Undercards, and the main reason why I have not stopped doing the Undercards content already sooner is because I don't really want to let you down. Of course, I know as much as I want you to watch my other content as well, if you really are here just for Undercards, I can't force you into enjoy the other stuff, and I kind of want to deliver on what you want out of me. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to get to the point eventually where it's too clear that the quality of the content's suffering from the fact that I'm just, you know, not super into it anymore. And again, just to be fully transparent about it, this isn't as a kind of guilt trip for any of you for oh, I shouldn't have asked for Undercards content. No, at the end of the day, it's always my decision, and it's not like every single second of making Undercards videos has been pain. As I say, there's been parts where I've enjoyed it. I just think that overall, it's starting to get a bit more negative than positive. And for full transparency, it is also somewhat done for views. It is also because I want to, please the viewers that I do have that came just for Undercards, but it is also partially for views. I'll be fully transparent about that. I mean, there's a reason why, as I mentioned, most of my Undercards content is very little editing, very low effort kind of quick stuff, and a lot of my other content is much more high effort. Because a lot of the time, the high effort kind of videos I'm making is the stuff I really want to make videos on, and I really want to put out there, and I really want people to, you know, enjoy, and I really think are the kind of the important videos on my channel. And a lot of the time, the Undercards is just kind of a way to get you in the door. Which, by the way, I'd like to thank you, because a lot of the time when I do make a video on something that I do care a decent amount about, but I know isn't going to be as generally popular, I generally kind of struggle to hit 100 views on it. However, the most recent video on Doodle Hex that I did, I was very worried about how that would perform, but in the end, that actually ended up getting more views than average. So I thank you for that, because I know that a lot of you must have done that because you really understood how much that game was important to me and how much I really cared about it, and you probably could see that the same kind of passion I had for it, because to be honest, off of just the title, I'm not sure if as many people would have clicked on it without the context of knowing that this was a video I was very excited to make. So anyway, thank you for your support on there, and especially thank you anyone who has now joined the Doodle Hex Discord server that I made actually before my own YouTube's Discord server a long time ago. Or join just generally the Doodle Hex community, the small community that we do have. Thank you a lot. Anyway, sorry for this video, I know it's probably quite long. I have no idea what the thumbnail is going to be for this one. I'm going to take a wild guess at this point and just say I put thumbnail in Comic Sans. I think that's what I'm going to do. Usually I just kind of look at everything that was changed in a patch and think, okay, what's the craziest, funniest thing I can do with this? You know, usually take my eyes more at whatever the most out there changes. But, you know, this one, I feel like we really didn't get much that's like, oh yeah, that's crazy. Oh, that's a cool new thing. That's quirky. It's like very normal. Like, I don't know, the only thing I think I could do is like, oh god, thank god, finally Thorn Ring's dead. But like, I don't know, I feel like it's too cliche.